In this video, we're going to look at interest groups, how they influence the government, and also public opinion. What is an interest group? A group of people who have the same interests. They share the same view on a certain matter, or they try to shape policies concerning that matter. Examples would be the NRA, the National Rifle Association, the AARP, the NAACP, the ACLU, and so those are all different organizations that represent different interests. So the NRA represents gun owners, and also probably gun manufacturers too, in a way. AARP is an association that protects, that advocates for retired people. NAACP is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, so it fights for civil rights, African American rights. The ACLU is the American Civil Liberties Union. They prosecute a lot of lawsuits in certain areas trying to protect what they see as infringements on civil rights. So those are all examples. You can be members of lots of different interest groups or none. But what are they for? They serve two functions. They try to shape public policy in two ways. They try to mobilize voters and get people interested in their issue. And then on the other side, they also try to put pressure on elected officials to try to get them to vote a certain way or create laws in a certain way. The other function they do is gathering information on their issue. You want elected officials to be informed about your issue, you may start an interest group and provide them with research so that when they're writing a bill or creating regulation that might regulate that industry, that they have the information that you want them to have. Now, they are definitely, interest groups are biased on the issues one way or the other, so elected officials should keep that in mind when they're getting information from interest groups, but that's something that they do. What allows these groups to exist? If we go back to the Constitution, what part of the Constitution says we're allowed to gather up in groups and talk about government and ask our government to do things? Correct. The First Amendment. The rights to assembly and petition the government combine to allow interest groups to exist and to be constitutional. Now, how do interest groups affect the legislative branch? A little political cartoon there. The cartoonist, in this case, believes that lobbyists working for interest groups tell Congress people exactly what to say. Now, they do have a lot of influence, maybe too much influence, depending on your political point of view, but they don't always directly tell Congress people what to say, but they do have a lot of influence. Interest groups mostly focus on Congress. So they're mostly focused on the legislative branch because that's where laws are created. And so that's where you have the most influence when you're trying to affect public policy. So, and congressmen and senators often hold office much longer than like the president, and they're elected, so they're more easily influenced than a Supreme Court justice. So that's why interest groups tend to focus on the legislative branch. That's where most of the action happens. And if you can influence a congressperson or senator to vote your way, and they stay in office for many, many years, they're going to be a strong ally to have. Interest groups can influence Congress several different ways. They can mobilize voters. So if Congress people see that lots of voters care about an issue, the interest group will make them aware of that, and Congress people may go a different way so they do not lose an election. Interest groups can also raise money to promote certain issues. They can also form political action committees to give money directly to candidates or directly in support of certain candidates. And often, which kind of leads towards this political cartoon here, they can help to write the actual language of bills or regulations. And that's where it gets a little bit sticky because we do not elect people that are in interest groups. We elect our congresspeople. So sometimes there can be a conflict of interest if, let's say, the National Rifle Association is directly writing gun regulations. Well, then that is, obviously they have an interest in writing it a certain way. You know, that may be a concern to have an interest group writing the laws that are going to be affecting them directly. But through the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the interest groups have the right to make their thoughts known and to try to influence congresspeople that way. So hopefully you've come up with some examples for how interest groups can influence the legislative branch. If you want to learn more, I highly recommend going to the Government Crash Course channel on YouTube and looking up the interest group video. There's a ton of good information there. Thanks for watching.